Yo.
Sir. People always asking. People always asking. All these damn people always people always ask. People always ask. All these damn questions. People always ask. All these damn questions. All these damn questions. People always ask. All these damn questions.
People always asking me all these damn questions, and they so confused. I don't know what to tell them. Why he do this? Why he do that? How you do this? How you do that? Hell yeah, I'm trying to do what I want, and I get good grades. That's why I wear these hats with A's. These people recognize that's why they stay up in my face. Cause
people always ask all these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions.
they wanna know.
Hey.
Sir.
Welcome back. I love pop-up podcasts on Sundays. I really. How are you doing?
Well,
Good. I want to say what's up to everybody out there joining us. Welcome to another edition of the Lighthouse series from Objectively Aggressive Presents. And today we're going to be talking about blood oaths. And before we get into this, of course, we're going to hit you with the boring stuff, which is disclaimer. We're just talking. We're going to get into some high level stuff. We talk about theory. We're going to get into some, on the ground, real life situation stuff. That's praxis. But we're just talking. So as high as it goes, as low as it goes, it's just theory, people. All right. So with that, why do we got to do that disclaimer? Why do we do that?
Hey, it's just theory until it becomes law.
Oh, that's important. That's important. And the reason that that's important, the sweet serenade is to the oath, is I think there's some really important things that are in oaths that we need to talk about. Because, us as military members at one point in time, we put our lives on the line. We signed the dotted line saying that we would support and defend the Constitution. And, lucky for me, I took the legal route and ended up learning the hierarchy of law to a certain extent to be competent in it. Meaning it can't just be used on me like any old regular person, but we can admit that it's convoluted for a reason. And so that oath was to the Constitution, which was to the country that questionably, does certain things a certain way. And, we're focusing on cognitive distortions here recently. And so, I feel like you have something you want to say about this, but I think this is important for us to talk about because there's a lot of things we have oaths to.
Yeah.
And I think people need to understand the difference between oaths, affirmations.
Yeah.
These are all different things. So what you got, Doc? Welcome back. I'm gonna close this.
I appreciate the intro. We were talking about oaths, and historically, what the oath did was it was a way to affirm verbally that I support your cause, your claim, your document. You have my trust, my loyalty, my fealty. Because usually in that oath, somewhere they usually put "so help me God." Sometimes,
right?
Like if you're in a courtroom, they want you to raise your right hand and take an oath, right?
Right.
And I'm thinking, like, why is that oath important here? Why do you think that oath is important?
Well, they're trying to hold you accountable for something, right? They want to say, and that's why I was saying the difference between the affirmation and the oath, because one is to God, the other one is you're swearing to your own.
But have you ever heard of somebody lying under oath?
Yes.
So when you lie under oath, it's kind of a big deal, right?
Perjury, even.
Perjury, yeah, because you made one statement, but what if it's in your best interest to not tell the truth? Is it worth keeping the oath?
Well, I mean, these all come down. It sounds like a moral dilemma to me.
Well, no, and so a dilemma can lead to a distortion.
Absolutely. Well, this is where we have problems. This is where cognitive dissonance comes from, because You know, you get put in these dilemmas and you're forced, well, I have a conscience, but this is what is holding me back.
And the oath removes some of the dilemma. Because when you start to understand that, and I like to study the French Revolution as a very important period in history of oath taking, where every time they wanted to do a new action, they would swear an oath. We're going to take an oath to kill the king. We're going to take an oath to try Robespierre. We're going to take an oath. Because what the oath did was like, it had a psychological effect of validating my conviction to the cause. Meaning they pledged an oath when they wrote that letter to Great Britain in America. They said, we pledge our lives, our honor, our sacred fortunes, and mutual impartation. And we binding ourselves together in oath that we're going to protect our liberty with our life.
Well, so how many times did they say the oath?
So, what you mean?
Like, so I would imagine psychologically, like saying the oath a couple of times every single time you had to do something, just like you said, would trigger in a person to make sure they're actually engaged. It's a re-engagement to check. It's a temperature check. It's a vibe check even.
Yes. And so what they started to realize is we need to get rid of these oaths.
Who is we?
So if you go to France after the revolutionary period, the military got rid of the oath. You didn't sign an oath or you didn't swear an oath to protect a document because the documents kept changing frequently.
This was before the French Revolution?
No, after the revolution. So after the revolution, you'll see that most of the after the revolution, you have a republic period from I think 15 to 47. And you've had different iterations of government in France since revolution. So right now, this is called the Fifth Republic right now.
Okay.
The Fifth Republic. So under the First Republic, meaning the first one after the monarchy was dismantled, and that goes back to the revolution times, the First Republic. So what they found out is that they did not know how to test the loyalty of the people. They had no test.
Well, because the government had been dispersed because of the revolution.
Yeah, it was overthrown. Yeah, it was overthrown.
How much of this has something to do with Prussia?
Well, so this is before that. This is before that. This is before that. But
so keep it moving.
But the reason that was important is because when they got rid of the oaths, they found that they did not know how to trust the loyalty of the men and women in the military. So they started to purge the military of high-ranking officers who, if they had disloyalty, anyone who had ties to the crown, anyone who, was cool with the king, any of those leaders were purged. Stalin did something similar in his military too in the late 30s, in the early 30s. He started to purge people who could challenge his authority. So the oath was removed, and then loyalties was now to the state. It is not to a document, it's to the state. And as the state changes hands, loyalty changes hands. And it's up to the individual to determine whose side he will be on.
Hey, hold on now. So let's talk about loyalty and oaths, right? So first of all, you heard about that one, blood is thicker than water?
Yes.
What is the whole, you heard what the whole one means, right?
Yeah, so the blood, the water of the covenant, or the blood of the, I know I've heard it, but it's escaped.
Right. So it says blood, it says a blood oath is thicker than the water of the womb.
Okay.
Right. Something similar to that. So like the people that you choose to take oaths with is stronger than the bonds that you have with your actual family.
Yes. And so let's say, for example, you join a secret society, and the secret society says you have to swear an oath that you will never tell our secrets. And you're like, and you don't realize they don't plan on telling you no secrets.
Look.
They're not telling you no secrets,
Look.
but you promise not to tell them.
Look.
And it's like, that ain't a secret, bro.
I feel
you just now know.
I feel like the area we're about to go in on confident opinion is about to get real shady, buddy. Listen, let's talk about pledging. Let's talk about the boule. Let's talk boule. Let's talk oaths to what we think is constructive, but it's not. Let's talk about pledging Greek. Let's talk about the origins of historically Black colleges. And this is not to tear them down. This is just to understand the focus of where we're at and where we're going, because if the NAACP was made for the advancement of colored people, but ever since its like creation, it's been like,
man. So what level?
It's not.
Hey, so like, so how confident you want us to go? Like, what on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, how high you want to go?
HBCUs, who are they created by?
They were created by Northerners who wanted to be benevolent to enslave people for the purpose of controlling them and giving them agrarian lifestyles to not challenge the power system. And I think that the origin, if you start to look at Fisk or Tuskegee, any of those schools, it's founded by people who were not trying to challenge the power structure, meaning they would have never gave you this position if they thought you could be a danger to them.
Man, I should do this research, but let's talk about Spelman. Let's talk about Spelman for a second. All right, specifically Spelman, because of the type of women and AKAs, man. They're, you know, I used to have a type back in the day, right? And now, in retrospect, I think about this, and there's nothing wrong with these women at all, but I think about like the origin and how it could have been crafted. Like this prototype of woman could have been crafted. I'm a conspiracy theory now.
Go ahead.
You remember the whole thing Cat Williams was talking about with those wives, like those planted wives that once you join this allegiance, I'm going to be the one talking to Rumorville just to keep the praxis together with how we can play along, right? Like those particular women look a certain type of way, but they're groomed, like there's a grooming that goes along with that, and some of these schools is playing a part in that.
Well, so one of the first things that you saw in our community following slavery was colorism was always a big issue in our community. Colorism and Black people bleaching their skins to be whiter. This was a very big industry before it got popular. Most people don't know the history of that. So the lighter that you were, the more privilege that were associated with it. Like we don't talk about light skin privilege in America, but it exists. We don't talk about
we see it in the NFL right now with Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
But it exists. And so when we start to understand that we have to be able to expose ideas, the reason that the fraternity and the sorority, where the brothers and the sisterhoods were so important, is because you only sign oaths with people who are family to you. They're brothers. They're kindred spirit.
Right.
You don't sign oaths with strangers. You don't see somebody at the bar and says, hey, let's do a blood oath. No, because you have not been initiated into the customs and rites and rituals. You have not passed under the fire. You have not laid in the tomb, in the coffin. You haven't walked by the veil. You have, you know what I'm saying? You haven't been initiated into our custom.
Well, but these are things that can create cognitive dissonance in one, right? Because you can live a life where there was something in me that part of me wanted to join, let's just say, a fraternity, because that seemed like the path to be like a good, you know, coming from Columbus, Georgia, that was a path.
And just so we know it, and just so it's clear that the fraternities and the Greek letters did not originate in Greece, or were they Greek? Dr. Henry Clark does some great research on this subject about the origin of these fraternities. And so when you saw to the origin of them further back than England in its contemporary form, the idea of being in a family and being in a crest, the idea of having a shared interest and taking the oath with people who have a shared interest or outcome, meaning that if me and you sign an oath, but it's no longer in my interest for you to keep my oath, then I'll be an oath breaker because it is in my interest. But now I have to create a situation where it is in both of our interests that this oath be maintained.
Okay.
and the question then becomes is if you're willing to say, I'm going to take an oath up until in willing my life, but then you say, well, I'm only going to up and will it till prison. Well, we're gonna have a problem, because if you're willing to go to prison and I'm willing to die, then who is going to be turning on who? Because you ain't ready to die, so you're going to prison. This is why a lot of the revolts never worked in the community of the enslaved people, is because some people would only say that we want to revolt for the purpose of telling on the revolters.
Oh.
So they get some more chicken.
Right.
And so that's what I start to understand when it comes to the reason that you're in a society. So
well, hold on. You said that they want to revolt, to join the revolt, to be able to snitch on the people who are revolting?
Yes, it's called meritorious manumission, meaning that if you knew that I was going to do something to get free and you told on me, you could get a better treatment. Hell, you can even get your freedom. And so you had a lot of these people who were infiltrating the organization to revolt. That's why
what I'm saying is, so they would actually, based on your research, what have you found that has shown that they were there to help incite the people?
So
could you imagine a slave not liking this other dude, be like, hey man, we should break out?
But you have to think of it from an organizational perspective. Once you ran away from that plantation, you only trusted somebody who looked like you.
Right.
Because everybody who didn't look like you was a threat. So you would only take food from those who look like you. Because there's many cases of people who have been double crossed because they left and then they got scared on the way. And they said, let's turn back. And the other person said, you know what? Ain't no going back.
Yeah.
And they said, well, I'm going back. And they went back and told. And so now you lost my head start. Or there's been a lot of cases where when you start to understand the psychology of it, anyway, the first Black Boule people, to our point, the first Black Boule people were not the children of enslaved people. They were the children of people who were not raised to be enslaved, if that makes any sense. So
yeah, so what I found is you pretty much have, people with diverse backgrounds who don't necessarily look a certain type of way. Some could pass as white. Some, and so they were put in these positions. Go ahead.
Well, but more importantly, they were put to be controlled opposition.
Yes.
We were told about Frederick Douglass because they didn't want you to know about Martin Delany. So if I control the media, the platform for messaging, that's why if an enslaved person was caught with David Walker's pamphlet in 1833, he was summarily executed. Because that pamphlet was so inflammatory that if they found it with you, they'd either kill you or remove your tongue from your mouth. So we understand
which from a legal standpoint is what, to your point earlier, was still more, you're walking around with theory, and as long as there's no praxis to that, there's still a First Amendment right to that.
Yeah, but then there's a cause and effect of it. But there is no First Amendment right to people who are considered property. If I'm considered property, there is no First Amendment right to me. And I think
you have to be free to practice.
And so their practice was, you don't read, let's not let the light of knowledge enter into the enslaved mind. Let us treat him like the beast of the field. I need this person to be no different than a cattle, no different than a mare that's bred for more pups. They called them pups. They didn't call them children. They called them pups. And they were bred like horses. And so anyway, when we talk about the Boule, we're talking about people who were raised specifically with the part to lead us, who would not challenge Eurocentric ideas, not in ideologies. And as you know, I'm a Du Bois fan.
Here we go.
Du Bois is my dude. But we have to talk.
So why do we need to know the difference, and why do we need to understand the Boule, and why do we have to understand this sort of controlled opposition?
And so the reason that's important is because first things is knowledge of self is a dangerous weapon. When you want to talk about theory, knowledge of self is the most dangerous thing you can have.
Cheers to that.
Knowing who you are and where you come from is the most powerful weapon you're ever going to have. if you knew you were the descendants of kings and queens and etc., you would think differently about yourself. You would not see yourself as an enslaved person. You would see yourself as a prisoner of a war.
So why was the narrative? Why push the narrative for Booker T, W.E.B. Du Bois? Why Frederick Douglass? Why not mention, what their backgrounds actually are?
Because if you talk about it, W.B. Du Bois, his father was not from America, nor he moved to America as a young child. But what you see happening, or his father, but what you see happening is there's a reconciliation of learning in the time that you are learning in and not being able to examine you in the process of your learning. So I don't know that this white individual who's helping me has an ulterior motive or alternate agenda, or he's trying to be a white savior. I may see him as a brotherhood of man.
Right. And I think that's what happens in a lot of places, especially in the military.
Yes.
Right. There's this indoctrination, but the first thing, as soon as you get the basic and you meet people, you're like, oh, this is my best friend, right? How many people from basic do you keep up with now?
It's a small group.
Do you still know people from basic and tech school and stuff that you still keep up with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so.
There's a couple of people I do. Hey, if y'all watching, what up? You know what I mean?
Hey, it's a small list. I mean, but I noticed that even the photo I got from basic. But I say that to say that the difference to me is that if all warfare is based on deception, then I am going to have to be able to deceive you at a psychological level that is so oppressive.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about the white architects of Black education. And I'm going to talk about that we were created in a system that was not designed for the human spirit to flourish in. And so what had happened is that when you use two of the most dangerous weapons you can combine is lust and greed. When you put lust and greed together, what you create is a system that won't self-regulate. Lust with greed will become consuming and detrimental. Yeah. And you had that in America. You had lust with greed. We could make profit from these free people who were the greatest threat to our society. And I think I don't think people can conceptualize the fear that was panicked in this country in the 1860s. The winter of 1865, the Christmas of 1865 was the scariest Christmas in American history, because rumors had got out through the white population that all of the Black people were going to just massacre everybody. They were afraid. It was literally the Christmas of panic. Just Google it. It's Googleable. And it's Google. And so white people, they were stocking up on weapons. They were preparing. And some of them, in preparation of the slaughter, were slaughtering Black people to prevent them being slaughtered.
Well, so this makes sense, because the rumor mill, once the rumor mill starts and you see the snowballing effect from it.
But do you think Black folks started that rumor?
Not at all.
That's what I'm saying.
But you remember we had a conversation about what scarcity creates. Yeah. Okay, so we got a comment here. I'll show this. Was Du Bois elevated to keep Garvey down?
Oh man, that's a great question, man. We got to talk about the Hegelian dialectic. The Hegelian dialectic, and that question is important because they had the same agenda, but they had different strategies for the purpose of division. So they were both, in his later life, they were both Pan-Africanists, but one of them is that Du Bois did not acknowledge our history pre-America, because he didn't have, and Du Bois did not have African ancestry, well, in the sense that he was more European, right, in his upbringing. And so I think that they were Hegelian dialectic. They were sent to change the strategy and to divide the people into a camp. I'm in Camp Garvey, I'm in Camp Du Bois. And they did a very good job of making them seem like they were further apart theologically than they were in physicality, meaning they could talk to each other because they were like intellectuals. So what do intellectuals want to do? They want to talk strategy.
Right.
And so if I disagree with your strategy, I don't mean I hate you, Kalvin. I just think your theory might be great. Maybe it needs some vote. So, but when you're Black in America, you don't have the luxury of theorizing among people because you are building as you are going. And you're being pumped up by two sides that both want you divided, because the people who funded Garvey and the people who funded Du Bois were the same people.
The same people.
They got money from both groups. It wasn't like it was one or the other, because they understood that they had to give them prominence. But that's a great question, though. But I don't think that Du Bois was elevated after it in the time period. I think Du Bois was elevated from the periods of maybe from the souls of Black folks to the souls of white folks from 1893 to 1922. After that, he got caught up with the communist thing, and the communist thing from the NAACP, which did him dirty, because he was honestly, Du Bois was elevated to be the first really token Negro. I think he was the first really token Negro that we had that said, "Hey, he's been stamped, he's been to Harvard, he's a doctor."
But he also was considered the first
he's the father. I mean, he's the first person to really do a study of a population that lived with him. He moved into Philadelphia and lived there for almost 2 years while he did his research, living amongst the people. And that had not been done. And I think that because when people don't realize, Du Bois never really considered himself a Black person in America. He only considered himself Black once he went to the South, because he had never experienced the South living. He didn't know how they were treated. Now, he read, he heard it, but he didn't see in the people. It's like I have book knowledge, but then I got street knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. He didn't get that street knowledge till he went down there to the South.
To the South. Because him and Booker T. Washington, I think, were more ideologically opposed, but the ideology that Booker T. Washington was straight from the horse's mouth. He said things that did not make white people nervous. That's important. He said things that did not make white people nervous. And as long as he was willing to say things that did not make them nervous, he would get money from white folks.
So when we're talking about all these different agendas, well, there was one main agenda, but it's all being funded a certain type of way. It appears.
Yes.
Right. The funding always, you just got to follow the money.
Well, yeah. And then, so if you look at the NAACP was funded by Jewish interest groups who wanted to elevate the Jewish concerns in America to the Blacks' concern. See, people don't understand the NAACP had a dual mandate. It was the advancement of colored people for the help and benefit of allocating other people into your plight. And see, when you do that, that's very disingenuous. And I'm not saying that the organization has not been helpful, but I can argue that they caused more harm than good, because the early organizations with Thurgood, they were fighting to integrate us into spaces where the people did not want us. And I can argue that it look good for you, but it sucked for me at the ground level because I have to live under your legal argument, and your legal argument ain't valid to me.
So could the NAACP have progressively pushed the Jewish agenda to the point of like even Holocaust victims?
Yeah, and so what I would say that when I say agenda, I'm
saying for clarification here, that's not anti-Semitic. I mean, did the NAACP did their fight help? Yeah.
But I think that, and I want to just clarify, I mean, we're talking about historical record. This isn't, the term anti-Semitic wasn't even created at the time of this discussion, just so we're clear.
Oh, got it.
So just so we're clear historically, that when we're talking about merging the plight of people, it's that I'm not going to do something just for you only. I'm going to have a reason for myself too. because what we've seen happen is there was a moralist argument that was being made that was before the rational argument was being made. See, you made an argument that I was equal, but you did not ultimately make the argument that I was suffering in the situation, and that by forcing me to integrate, I'm going to get an inferior standard education by integrating me, because all of the Black teachers will not be able to teach in the white schools. And you're going to put me into a situation that was designed by people who hate me to teach me, and they're going to have to now make their children endure learning with me to their detriment. That almost caused 104 Senate Republicans the Democrats to sign the Southern Manifesto, where they pledged an oath. They wrote their names down saying, we're going to fight this to the end.
Right. No, and so when that's an oath.
And when you sign your name to a paper and say you ain't gonna do something, you made an oath.
Well, so with that oath, but that meant that regardless of what's going on, regardless of what I said before, this is what I'm doing now.
Yes, it's what I'm doing now. And my strategy, see, there's something that's very dangerous to do, is to write your defiance on paper and sign your name on it. It's like you get a notice from the court and you say, I'm not showing up. Don't send me no more. Sign, leave me alone. But I say that because I don't use the critique of these people for the purpose of aggrandizement. I use it as a part for conceptualizing the framework that they were operating in, an environment, one for survival, not for thriving. It was for survival. And I think that when you're thinking for survival purposes, you're more apt to compromise with people because you understand that failure to compromise could lead to my demise.
Well, yeah. So what I found is that right there at survival. So on my big all-seeing clock, Salt, you love it. You love Salt. At 5 o'clock is where I find the law of survival, right? And that's the the conceptual framework under the law of habit, right? So you do what you do for survival, then it becomes habit. But I'm also finding that this comes after, like, you're put in this position of what your purpose is supposed to be. And what right there, when I find that at 5 o'clock, by the way, on Salt. And it sits, submission in the body sits directly on top of logic, right? So you have to have this logic for submission of your body. So, but your logic is based on some rationale that's sitting on top of your emotions. And so what you just said explains, like, cognitively what happens. I just explained cognitively what you're talking about because of how rationale works with leverage and all these other types of stuff. So leverage sits on top of emotion. Rationale sits on top of what? So I don't have my thing up, but all these things influence the other, right? So your submission of your body is based on logic. Your leverage sits on your emotion, and these tip the balances. You know what I mean? Shit, I've also found out why people drink at 5 o'clock cognitively. We don't get into that. Right, but it makes sense, right? Because by the time in praxis purposes, like, we could talk theory all day, but like, people are listening to this and it sounds good, and it's a guide and it's a warning, but when you got to turn right around and apply it, it's harder because of the leverage that goes on outside of it.
And so this is where most people have a challenge, that they can't take an idea to its logical conclusion because they don't know the logical basis for it. Meaning, I can't take your argument to its logical conclusion if I don't know the rationale, if I don't know the process that you use to get to this conclusion. I have to know that first. Because if I don't know that, then I'm going to make assumptions and jump to conclusions that will not add up logically from where you're at currently. So, like, I see where you're at currently, and I have to say, if I take that to its furthest extent, where do I go with it? how do I conceptualize it, and then how do I utilize it for myself? Because when you're talking about these moving pieces that are moving very quickly, it's sometimes hard to make praxis when there's so many different variables. Meaning like, for example, most people use what's called bounded rationality to make decisions. And what bounded rationality is you just make the best choice given the information that you have at hand. You just make the best choice with the information that you have at hand. Now, the only thing with that is that from a bounded rationality perspective, the more information that I have at hand at any given time means I can make better decisions.
Right. It's about it's about informed decision making.
Well, but it's informed by what you think is rational. Because see, I can't be informed if I think that you're making a rational argument. I can't make inference from it. So when you have a communication with somebody, that's why it's important to understand terms, because if we confuse terminology, then you might make an inference that I'm not trying to make. You might assume that I'm saying something in negative that I don't mean negative, but it is implied that way because my question is not thinking about how you feel about this emotionally. Like, I'm not thinking about, wow, when I have conversations with people, I don't think, how are they going to feel after I tell them this? That's their responsibility. That's not mine. How much time?
I would say, like, I understand why you would say that, but
no,
this is
how much time how much time, if I'm using bounded rationality, how much time should I allocate to someone's emotions before I make a decision?
I think based on where we are, I think we're kind of charged with being more emotionally intelligent, aware of anybody that we deal with at this point.
But that's my point. This is my point that I am making. When I say how much time should I use,
whatever.
No, when I say how much time should I take to use to factor in someone else's emotions into my decision making. Now that question does require emotional intelligence. Yes.
It would depend on the dang situation at hand because
we're going into bounded rationality. That means I'm only can make the decision based on what I know at the moment.
So we're talking about emotional decision making.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about I'm saying that I am not going to
I'm labeling, but I'm labeling for a reason. I'm labeling for a reason, but because all decision making is emotional, first of all.
Yeah, but I'm saying that if all decision making is emotional, does it have to be? Can I make what I'm saying is that if it has to be, then I am not going to determine what the emotion are that you are. Like, let's say I get the emotion.
You're not responsible for the emotion that comes out.
Yeah, because I don't know how it might be pleasant. It might be hurt. I don't know. And
and so I like this back and forth. What we're talking about is maturity, though.
Yeah, but
we're talking about maturity, but we're also talking about maturity and location.
Oh yeah.
I think maturity, to be mature, is to actually know your location and know your privilege. Yeah. And I'm saying know your privilege to the point where you can speak about, oh, no. I'm privileged here, and I know why, and I know who does not have access to this level, and why not.
And that's what I try to explain to people is that I could spend all day thinking about how to emotionally address an issue, but in that process, I've missed the moment in the window of the emotion. That now the emotion has changed while I was trying to get a strategy for deal with the emotions have changed, because sometimes you have to strike when the iron is hot.
Yes.
You got to get in a boom. Sometimes you got to let it cool down first. And all I'm saying is that if you're trying to use emotions and bounded rationality at the same time, it's not going to produce the best outcome. Now, how do I know it won't produce the best outcome? It's because if I ask people, would you rather make an important decision based off of logic, or would you rather make an important decision based off emotion? If you tell me that you would rather make an important decision based off emotion, then I would argue that ain't the best decision.
Oh yeah, no, well, yeah, and you could probably pull some
Great
research
example.
to show you, some examples.
And so what I'm saying is,
well, if you would actually be able to pull case law to show mitigation,
yes,
or acting in the moment in certain cases.
Yes. It was temporary insanity. You lost rationality because your emotions became too powerful.
But you still getting locked up though.
Well, it depends on your melody and your situation, your location, your area code. That's another issue. But the reason that I talk about this the way I do is because when you sign an oath, going back to our oath, you're signing an oath off of emotion. Because it may not be logical for me to sign an oath says I'm willing to die for whatever the Queen of England says I should die for. Like, because have you read the British oath to their Constitution?
What you think?
Yes.
Hell yes. And let me tell you what I loved about it. The fact that you thought I read it.
It was in that article I sent you today. I don't know if you looked at it.
Oh no, the only one because I was moving around, like I said, I was doing some chores or whatnot. The only one I was able to see is that one picture you gave me that had the paragraph. Yeah, it had the quick paragraph that I was able to read about.
Yeah, but in that article, it actually goes through each country's oaths for their military. It goes over.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I'm reading the oaths. I'm like, man, to whatever to the king and the queen. I'm like, man, we still on that right now? Yes. To the crown.
Yeah, no. Because people take it for a joke, but like for real, you're signing your life to an allegiance to the Constitution, to the king, the queen, to whatever. So if you're over there in certain countries that got conscription, which I actually agree with.
Yeah, but the idea that the oath is made under emotional, sometimes you could say duress, because if I don't make this oath to Allah, they're gonna cut my head off. So now am I making an emotional decision, or am I making a logical decision?
That's a both. That's a both, sir. That's a both decision.
We don't know what I'm saying, but which is it first?
It would be the logical decision.
You know what I'm saying? But that's what I mean. So if I'm using bounded rationality in real time, then I have to be able to have a metric where I don't care if it's a millisecond or a microsecond. I have to be able to instantly say what is the outcome without the emotional framework at the moment. And then bring it and then overlap it.
Well, I mean, so now we're talking about cognitive distortions at a very nuanced level, because we're talking about leveraging a situation emotionally to not have to deal with it later emotionally.
Yeah, or that you're not, like, I can speak for myself. I am not the best gauge of emotions. I'm not. Like, I can miss it. Like, I can think that you're happy and you be sad. and then I'll go back and I'll think about what you did. I'm like, you know what? They probably was not feeling well. But that's how I am. And so I know that.
Well, but again, like, socialization plays a lot of that. And I don't, we're not speaking to our personal experience all the way like that, but from a law enforcement perspective, how much were you trained to deal with emotional components or emotional intelligence up to the point of just doing what you have to do? You were de-escalating situations, but like, was the whole interaction about mitigating the emotions or just diffusing the situation?
No, so that's the thing. I feel like if you go into a situation with the answer before you know what to do, you've already set yourself up for error. I don't presuppose, but I'm saying I don't presuppose that if I go to a scene and a mother is holding her dead baby from SIDS, and she's in a delusional state, and she's rocking the baby, not realizing that the baby's dead, I'm not gonna come in there and be like, man, I need you to put some clothes on, and I need to fill this paperwork out. No, I'm gonna stop and say, even though I'm here for a law enforcement purpose, I have to realize that this is beyond outside of what I do.
Well,
so what I mean is that in that particular case, it's like, what can I do? Okay, I know I need to get some help here. So call the chaplain, call the, these people.
But that's training kicking in for you. That's muscle training. But okay, so like from a socialization situation, all right, if you come up a certain type of way, you're hypersensitive to emotions because more often than not, you had to for some sort of expectations of not getting in trouble. Maybe you had high expectations from your parents, so there's always this vibe check going on. And so some people develop into, people who are just constantly doing vibe checks. Now that actually,
but it's not a minority of people. If you look into the research on this, only about a third of people can actually determine what an emotion is in real time. The majority of people cannot in real time determine what emotions are. So it's not those who can not do it are like an anomaly.
Yeah.
Average person can't do it, and some people can't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it takes a certain level of training, and so this is one of those, I think, nuanced areas that I kind of fall into, right? And so one of the things that we don't talk about a lot is the curse of knowledge. Yeah. And the curse of knowledge puts us in a situation of giving us lenses that once we see, we think everybody sees or should see.
Yeah. And that can lead to distortions.
And that is what SALT is.
And that can lead to distortions. And I think that when I try to explain to people, I say I want the context of the statement. So for example, if I were to accept the premise that because of my job as a cop that I cannot connect in an emotional level with people, I think that's reductionist. I think it misses the central.
Oh no!
I'm saying that it can be reductionist.
I'm saying from a system. So I gave you a framework, right? A perspective of how your job can allow for you to miss. You have emotional cues, but your job is to remain objective because
but that's what I'm saying. I think what is it? And when you say an emotional cue, it normalizes that there are cues to emotions that are universal, and it's hard to cue to something that you like. It's like if I have a blind spot in my window, like if a truck's on the side, there's no cue until I hit the car. And I feel like a lot of times,
that is true in traditional driving, but now we have the side view mirrors to help that's
a newer model cars.
Right, but they're now all these cars are now, the rear, backup detection, backup camera.
And that's what I think emotional intelligence was created to do. Emotional intelligence was created to give you extra mirrors so that you can see and understand outside of your current perspective. Right. What I'm saying is that we sometimes, like to your point, we impute what we know to others as if to say that it is common knowledge. But being able to identify emotions in real time is actually kind of rare. And because those who do it tend to have an advantage, because people who have an emotional intelligence are more successful than those who have higher IQ. Because you could be the smartest guy in the room, but if nobody wants to talk to you because you have no socialization skills, then you're not going to be as successful, because the people who you're going to be in those rooms with don't want to have conversations with you. And I think that's the challenge that I think when it comes to using bounded rationality. So if I say, listen, I'm going to shoot you unless you sign this oath. Now, you are creating an emotional situation where bounded rationality will not matter to me if I said that I want liberty or death. So even though you pull out that gun to me, I say I want liberty or death. If I can't have liberty, you pull the trigger, because I've already decided in my mind that I am not going to be living on my knees. I'm not going to be subservient. That
You
I've already.
rather
So,
you
so
say
rational.
down on your feet than live on your knees.
Yeah, and so from a rationality perspective, there's some people who may be. I'm not saying it's easy to say what you would do until that moment arrives, but when you start to think about how you think, I know that I'm not thinking about saving my life. I'm not thinking about that because I think about life differently. Because once you come back from a war zone, and if you want to talk about the psychologically, once you come back from a war zone, there is some survivor, trauma there. There is some like, why did I make it out? And when you go through psychological things and you're talking about rational decisions, the reason that emotions can be problematic is because their emotions can leave you stuck psychologically in a place that will not let you come back to reality. Some people call this illness, some call it delusional, some call it whatever, but people get stuck in a place emotionally where they cannot make the connection anymore to what is happening logically. And I think that is
the cognitive distortion. That's the cognitive distortion where there's a gray area where where reality and the delusion are trying to come together and that you just can't grasp it, so you stay in it.
Yeah, and so in order to release this distortion is to accept this idea that I'm not trying to, when we're talking about oaths, I'm looking at the group behavior, not have I made an oath to myself? Have I made an oath to me? Every day I'm going to get up and run a mile every day. That's my oath to me. So what is the penalty for breaking my oath? In some situations, it can be death. If you break your oath, it can be death. In some situations, if you break your oath, you lose your membership, or whatever. But you're disassociated from the group if you break your oath. And so when we get into an oath, I think it's important to understand what we're signing up for, because some things come with small print, and when you start to read some of that small print, you might be like, nah, I'm good.
How does that book roll that book back up?
Which one?
The one you just showed.
This. Oh,
yeah, we're going to use that as the book tip. How is that, and tie that into the oath?
Man, the white architects of Black education, ideology, and power. Because see, we have to create the school system in America was modeled off of the Prussian education system, because the Prussian system wanted to make soldiers at a young age. At a young age, they wanted people who could follow orders and could conform and be uniform, sit in line, stand in line, single file line. They were preparing you to be a soldier at early as possible. Right. So we take the same model. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, though, when you train people to fight, but you don't give them a battle, they fight each other. And a lot of our education was not designed by people who were trying to build strong minds in us. They were not built by people who would labor with us, who would tarry with us and stay up late to make sure we got that lesson. Our education system was built by people who would give assignment to take home to school, knowing the people at their house couldn't even read.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why I think that it's always tied into ideology and power, because if you show me who made your education system, I'll tell you who got the power.
Yeah. 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 I think that's important too. Speaking of which, Mastery by Robert Greene is the one that I'm on right now. Good book talking about, of course, mastery. And it takes about 7 years. And I give or take with it. 5 to 10, between 5 to 10 years to get to mastery. This is a good book about how to master your craft and who you are. And so what we're talking about, like when you're taking these oaths, like hopefully it's something that you have mastery in, and yeah, my money tip, make sure you're in your high yield savings accounts or checking accounts. Make sure you got your money sitting in there. Final thoughts.
I'm done with taking oaths, man. I'm oathed out. I like to think that I am in organization of thinkers, you know, and we want to be challenged in our thinking. And I feel like sometimes, you know, people don't want to challenge their thinking, so they won't initiate challenging yours. And I appreciate you, man, allowing our thoughts to be challenged and creating that form, man. It's powerful, because I think people need to see that we may not agree on everything, but when it comes time to understanding, that's the goal. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, I appreciate you, and I thank you for the sentiment. I would say that there should be more disagreement that I have with you, but
Yeah.
I too, you know, am a fan of history and some of the stuff that you're saying. So the commentary and, you know, the color commentary that I try to provide, and because this podcast has taken many turns, but at the end of the day, it's still about light and, you know, some of the stuff that we're talking about that, you know, you're bringing to a forefront. I'm trying to bring out the nuances and how they could be in praxis. But no, the final thought is my oaths. I don't like to say what I'm not going to do.
Yeah.
But I would say from my disposition now, man, from who I am now, I'm going to check and double check and triple check any oath that I'm signing. And honestly, I might, you know, have to stick to an affirmation, because I don't necessarily want to tie it to my God if I, you know what I mean, depending on what it is. Yeah. Right. But I don't want to use a lot of words, but I do want to say that understanding that when we agree to do something, I know we didn't agree to be put on this planet, but when we should all agree that we're all here, and we don't all have the same situation, but we're all here in some sort of situation.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get through that. Like right now, man, like promoting the podcast, promoting all this stuff. This is how I'm trying to eat now. And this all goes together with school. And so, you know, I have an oath to myself that I'm not going to let myself fall.
Yeah.
You know, and so oaths are important because they show your allegiance to an emotional idea that has logic behind it.
Yeah.
And so for me, OA is an oath. Holy shit, if you put another TH behind that, oh, I'm gonna freak that. I've been waiting oh my damn.
Oath.
I was trying to figure out how I was gonna freak that. Or is that oath is OATH, right?
Last time I checked. And no, I appreciate it, because I think that sometimes when you talk about the power, I would say the power of binding yourself in mutual agreement is definitely interesting to be studied, because I've noticed that it is very seldomly when we try to use bounded rationality for group ideas, and it tends to sometimes to be logical, to change your opinion if you need to change your opinion. So if I have an opinion that I could change, I would say that I'm open to changing my mind, because I can't use bounded rationality in group thinking, because sometimes it makes more sense to go with the group for rational purposes.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's like, to your point about, you know, I don't say what I wouldn't do, but then I say, well, it's a very interesting point. You know, I'll accept the premise.
Well, I have an unconscious oath to you, because we have, you know, our agreement to do what we said we were going to do, and I appreciate that.
Oh yeah,
and appreciate everything that you're doing. And you know,
I got to say what, man, because I said back, if he want to go this road, he needs to at least do it the right way. If he go do the road, because I will tell you this: if you're gonna go down the road, it's fun, but it can be very interesting at times.
Hey, it is, and I appreciate your Lighthouse.
Oh yeah.
And it makes me, as I go into my outro music and then the commercial, you can stick around if you need. It makes me don't worry about it,
Oh yeah, man.
Hey,
you know,
play it.
Now, you do the commercial, man.
No, it goes music, then commercial, because we're gonna go off.
Okay. Well, like last time we like a 30.
Yeah, we didn't do the break.
KJ. Hey, for all those people in my business. Hey, don't worry about me. Hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Hey, you ain't got to worry about me. Don't worry about me, cause I ain't worried about shit. 2 fingers in the air and I'm out this bitch, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Hey, you ain't got to worry about me. Don't worry about me, cause I ain't worried about shit. 2 fingers in the air and I'm out this bitch. I'm leaving these people breakfast while eating niggas for breakfast. The flow is so reckless. The shawty touching my necklace. The wrist is so costly. My ears is so frosty. I'm shaking these haters off me. Keeping it cold like coffee. You banging this through your speaker, then the shit is off the meter. I ain't trying to pull with the bullshit like I'm a preacher. But shawty, it's nice to meet you. Shawty say she a teacher and shit. I like brains, so shawty, where can I reach you? Cause I'm sick with it, slick with it, cut-headed with the dick, quick with it, cause I'm sick with my lines, I'm quick with my mind, but at the same time, I get sick of these hoes, I'm sick from the dough, but shit, you already know, cause these people always asking me all these damn questions, and I don't lose, so I guess I am the champion. Catch me on this beat, yes, I'm sealing and stamping it. You don't like it, you can't stand it, don't worry about it.
Hey, well, I gotta pay these bills, man.
Mark one.
Hey, thanks everybody for hanging around. Dr. Ham had to take off. I really appreciate the support that I get. This is very special for a lot of different reasons, and it's going to continue going. So get ready for season 4. We got one more episode for February, Black History Month, and season 4 is coming. We're coming with a new type of sound and look. So I'm going to upgrade a little bit. I won't promise you, Tyler Perry studio type quality, but we're going to get it cracking. At the end of the day, the Lighthouse series is to be a guide and a warning. So if there are topics that y'all want to talk about, you want us to talk about, because we can go off on many different things, let me know. Let Dr. Ham know. We try to put things out in the atmosphere to generate conversation. I'm in class right now. It's having me challenge a lot of different things, but coming to social media, talking to people, it lightens my spirits, but it also gives me different things to talk about. I try to keep it light, talking about certain surface level things kind of limits us, because we don't get after the bigger idea, and we truly get distracted. Even if the information is good, like there's some juicy information. I swear, I just saw an interview or something about LL Cool J and some song with Diddy that just sounds all the way suspect now, but I don't know. I hate that feeling is there, but too much information is being exposed right? This is why you got to be careful who you make your heroes. But you can also take very good qualities from a lot of people and create, you know, a good life. So I want to say, you know, I hope everybody out there is taking the time to learn themselves. I know we're distracted with a lot of great things that we're trying to do, but if you're not taking the time to, you know, get your light out and make sure you're shining a light on what you're doing and why you're doing it, and making sure your purpose is what it needs to be. Oh man, when it comes down, it comes down. And a lot of people like to call it crisis, midlife crisis, things of that nature. I ain't gonna say stay woke, I'm just saying stay aware. It's about awareness, clarity, creation, and balance. That comes through light, life, leadership, and love, through the human, friend, partner, and lover perspective. That's Salt. That's right. This is OA Podcast with a K. We out here. Thank you.